Today is January 29th, and we are talking about being present, even when it's uncomfortable. Being in the moment with life, whether you're alone with yourself or you're alone with others, being present, being with them or being with yourself. Let's talk about it. Hi, I'm Candy. I'm a hypnotherapist who's deconstructing from evangelical Christianity, and I know how mindset shapes our behavior. So in this series, I'm going to share my daily reflections from 3 different devotionals. The Book of Awakening by Mark Nepo, and that one's a little more spiritual, non-religious. Also, Jesus Calling by Sarah Young, which is a very modern Christian approach. And My Utmost for His Highest by Oswald Chambers, which is a very classic Christian angle. My goal is to help you see how each one of these devotionals or these day books might shape your mindset a little differently. And if you're into that kind of reflection, please like and follow for more. Let's get started. For January 29th in the Book of Awakening, the reading is about how there are 2 ways to feel the fullness of life, and both arise from authenticity. The first one is from our love of life, and the second one is from our love of one another. And the ways we stop feeling this fullness of life, what stops us from experiencing this love of life or this love for one another, is our hesitancy to be fully alone, either fully or hesitancy to be fully alone with life, like on our own, allowing life to show us its beauty, being okay with being just one with nature and alone with nature, or in your thoughts with yourself, or when you're with others, just not being fully present with them. It's really about being present, just allowing life to teach you in the present moment, allowing life to speak to you in the present moment. This is what I'm getting from his reading today, that one thing he says is being half anywhere is the true beginning of loneliness. And I think that's true. And a lot of times we can find ourselves being alone and wishing we were with others, and then also being with others and wishing we were alone or with a different set of others. Instead of being present, seeing what's right in front of us, experiencing what's right in front of us. And all too often we don't know what we have until it's gone. And then we live in the past, or we live in the future, hoping for something different than what we have in the present. And so I would say basically his message is like constantly wishing you were elsewhere is a problem that causes loneliness. But being in the present moment, really being fully present, even with yourself. So basically when you cannot stand being alone with your thoughts, if you've always got to be busy with others and doing things all the time, you're running from something. You're not feeling the fullness of life, even though you look so busy, but you're not happy. You're not joyful. Deep down, if you're honest with yourself, you're exhausted. You need that time to just meditate, be alone with yourself, your thoughts. And if that scares you, that's okay. I've been there. That's the time to face them. Look at them. Are they true? If they are, what are your choices? You always have choices. They might be few, but you have choices. And also when you're with a friend or a group of people, be present with them. People change. They're not who you thought they were. Sometimes you'll be surprised by the things they say or do, either pleasantly surprised or not so pleasantly surprised. But that's how you get to know people. We tend to figure we know people because we knew them at one point in time. But you can change in an instant. You've changed, I'm sure. And I think it's good for us to continually remember that just as we change, other people do. And so getting to know them in that moment, listening, having the conversations, I think in today's political world, it's become very polarizing, and we look at somebody who we assume maybe voted a certain way, and we don't want to associate with them because we've assumed that they are evil. They are evil. That's really what both sides think of each other. And because of what they've been told, because of the conclusions they've drawn, and we have to be able to have the conversations in order to actually see one another, or else we will become one another in the least positive of ways. If you're hateful to somebody because you think they're different than you will become what you're accusing them of. So we have to break that cycle, break that programming by being present, allowing ourselves to be alone with life, that space where we can think, get clarity, listen to life, watch nature, resonate with nature, and then also be present and alone with one another. Not avoid that time where we need to connect with one another, really connect. Not just surface level connect, but let someone see who you are and learn who someone else is. And then do it with another one and allow other people to see you when it's safe. Use common sense when it's safe. But that's the message for the Book of Awakening. That's my understanding of it today. In Jesus Calling, today's reading is about really being present in the moment with Jesus, with your awareness on God's peace. So Sarah Young talks about one of the privileges of being made in God's image is the ability to focus our thoughts, and that we're to bring every thought captive and then turn your thoughts towards Jesus. When you simply focus on the peace of God, your anxiety, your fear, judgments kind of melt away. They can't stay in the presence of that peace. Now, this is used for a lot of spiritual bypassing, this kind of teaching, because when someone's worrying, first of all, there are actually anxiety disorders. It's the nervous system is kind of stuck, and it needs to be able to move through it, but it's stuck in a loop of anxiety, and it's being triggered over and over and over. And to say just focus on Jesus can trigger it even more, because then the person feels anxiety about not being able to focus, and they think that they can't. And it makes it worse. And it is because they need some reprogramming done. And sometimes they need medication to help get that jump started. This can also, when you're in the present moment, let's say you're with a friend and they are telling you about their life, maybe something that they're struggling with, and you want to be in the present moment with Jesus, with your thoughts on him. So then you try to just gaslight them. Let's talk about Jesus. Is God, are you trusting him? Have you prayed? All the things that you hear, the Christianese that you hear. Maybe you've even used it. I know I've used some of these things before, on myself mostly, so that I wouldn't have to really make the tough decisions that I wanted to make or needed to make in the present moment. I couldn't fully be alone with my own thoughts, even because I was scared of them. They made me really uncomfortable. And instead of asking myself if they were true, it was just focus on Jesus. Just focus on Jesus. Just focus on Jesus. If that's all that you can focus on, that's all that matters in life, and that can bring a little bit of comfort because you give your mind somewhere to go when it's feeling anxious. It does need direction, but it's kind of like escaping reality so that you don't have to deal with it. That doesn't make it better. Sometimes it makes things much, much worse because you're putting off making decisions that you need to make. So, whereas Book of Awakening is about being present with yourself, present with life, present with another, Jesus calling, I would say, is kind of like being present with Jesus, thinking about Jesus. And then that's so, once again, I'm going to say it again, it's so subjective to who you think Jesus is. And none of us know him. We can pretend and say that we do, but we do not know Jesus of Nazareth who lived 2,000 years ago. We've read words about him, and maybe you could say, oh, I've had experiences with him. And I would say that too when I was a Christian. And I'm not going to negate any of that, but what I'm going to say is you can't know for sure that that's the Jesus of Nazareth that's written about 2,000 years ago. So it's subjective. It also keeps you disconnected from the people around you. And finally, from my utmost for his highest, I would say he's basically saying be present in your circumstances because that's how God speaks to you, which I would agree with. I would agree with the idea of being present in your circumstances so you can learn from and really see opportunities in front of you. But Oswald Chambers' message here is not that. It's his goal. He's saying God's goal is to destroy your confidence in your own convictions, which I will say that a lot of times your convictions are shaped by your upbringing, by your culture, your religion, all of that, right? And so it is good for you to look at your convictions and not just say, I know a lot of people who've deconstructed really hate the verse, lean not on your own understanding, but in all your ways acknowledge him and he shall direct your paths, right? I would say the lean not on your own understanding doesn't mean like don't do what you think is right. I would say you could see that in a different way. I'm not saying wasn't that way when it was originally written, but I would read that in a different way today. I would say that a lot of the things that you believe to be true are simply not true, or are just simply programs that you've been programmed with because they are a preference of somebody else. And so they've said, this is the way. And you've believed it because you were taught it from a young age, or you were taught it when you were really suggestible, and you've believed something that may not be true. And you do need to sift through those things. You can't just, your own convictions can be wrong. So I think having an openness there is important. I understand that that's not Oswald Chambers' intention here. He's basically saying you don't know the way God does, and so you have to lean on God. But once again, it's subjective. And where do you get what God is telling you to do? Like, let's say you have two choices in front of you, two different jobs that you could pick, or two different houses you could buy, and you don't know which way to go. Now you're looking for scripture verses, you're looking for signs, and you can make anything point to the direction that you just need to make a decision. Just make that the right decision. So in a way, you're leaning on your intuition, but a lot of us don't know how to listen to our intuition because we have learned and been trained to ignore it for years and years and years and years. So I guess that's my 2 cents on that part. He also says that a lot of people who claim to know God's ways are actually living contradictory to it and actually doing things in the spirit of the devil. So that's why it would show up as hypocrisy to who God really is. And it hurts him that you are representing, or whoever lives this way is misrepresenting him. Now, where I don't believe in a God out in the clouds or separate from any of us, I think I watch Christians today do things, people who call themselves Christians, being okay with things that were not the way I learned Jesus, right? They're saying Jesus is okay with doing things like, I don't know, treating immigrants like, I mean, very inhumanely, not as equals, and calling it Christianity. I see people treating others who have maybe have different skin color than them as less than. These are all ways that Jesus did not talk. Jesus did not teach this kind of stuff. And so they are taking the name of Jesus in vain, in my opinion. That's really taking God's name in vain, is when you represent his character differently than what is true and or than what he has shown. And if you're going with the Jesus of Nazareth, none of that matches up to the Jesus of Nazareth. Now, since I don't believe in a God outside of, us, I would say that source is benevolent. Wants good because it's for source. I mean, that would be ridiculous if it wasn't for good for all of us. So when you forget that oneness and you start acting in separation and fighting and going to war with one another and creating hierarchies and ways to push another down, that's those who have forgotten source, God, universe, and they think in separation. And so they do act in contrary ways to God. I guess that's how I would say it. So that's what I have on those three. And I would recommend that you just be present in your life, in your body, in your situations, keeping in mind oneness when you're when you're with yourself and when you're with another, and see how differently that causes you to live your life. Have a great day. Remember, you get to decide what you devote your thinking to today. You might not be able to control every thought that comes in, but you can definitely decide what you entertain. And whether it comes from something I've said today or something completely different, choose wisely and set an intention that truly benefits you and those around you. And if you found any value here today, don't forget to like and follow. Thank you for joining me on this journey. And let's keep our minds on what helps us love ourselves and each other a little bit better every day.